Well, let's go for it. I'm not really prepared for this. I'm doing another video. It's pretty lousy day out there. I was going to go fishing, but the water out back looks pretty muddy. Let's just try another video on the coming laws of the kingdom of God, and I'm zeroing in on the laws of the common land people right now. But I'll bring in the priesthood too here, because I'm going to do a comparison. I didn't really write down any scriptures. I kind of know where I want to go. This is first and foremost. I like to call this Old Faithful. If you understand this, and you understand that, let me find it here, that the Torah is an instruction manual given to the Son concerning the restitution of all things, you are well on your way to becoming a master of the sacred secrets of the kingdom, the hidden truths, the dark sayings. You're well on your way to becoming a scribe, a disciple of the kingdom of God. For, let me go back here once again, what has been will be again. What has been done will be done again. There's nothing new under the sun. Keep it short on that one. So what has been is what will be again, is what is happening again. You know, if you really want to let the cat out of the bag, nothing from the earth to Adam and Eve, to Moses, to what was in his hands when he came down from the mountain itself, the camp, the ancient tribes of Israel, like I said, the earth, the priesthood, the common land people were never the real thing. If you understand this, that which has been is what will be, you've become a master of the mysteries of the kingdom, which are buried in the Torah. Torah means instruction. It means teaching. Think not that I came to destroy the Torah and the prophets. I came to fulfill. Why, for example, are only a few being called right now? Why are there many be called but few chosen? That is an illusion. That is a mysterious saying by Messiah. And Paul picked it up. Why are there only elect right now? Because God is only calling a priesthood right now. That's right here. And right now, they are according to faith, they are in the heavenlies. They are at the right hand of Christ. They are sitting with him in the heavenlies, with God. That's his body, right? We're the body. And well, that's where right? You're attached to the head. What has not appeared yet is the common land people, of which these priests are going to rule over. These, for the Torah, having a shadow of the good things to come. Nothing was ever real to begin with, starting with this present earth. There's going to be a new heaven and a new earth. The first earth was never the real thing. Adam was a type of him who was to come. Adam and Eve, Paul compared them to the church, to Christ and the church. They were never really the real things. This is the cat that's out of the bag. Oh, why bother getting people saved if everyone's going to be saved or restored? because he's only calling a priesthood right now. Not so long after this whole movement started, the Torah was put away by the Roman Catholic Church. You went to heaven. And the rest of your time was to play a harp on a cloud staring at the face of Jesus and God. Now at the end, Daniel 12:4, time of the end. Knowledge shall increase. Do a little research on that verse. It's not talking about technology increasing. I mean, I'm sure it could apply. I mean, you could use it to apply it to that, but it's knowledge of the book that's being opened in the last days. These are the mysteries of the kingdom. Just in review, hey, you know what? To have a kingdom, you need a king, right? Here's Melchizedek, the shadow of Melchizedek. And here's his body. Notice once again, they have the white garments, white hats, they have these flaps. It's their hair. They look like the Ancient of Days. In Daniel 7, these are the Huios sons of God, the descendants. They will appear at the end of the age, in the last days. Isaiah 2:1-4. And the Torah is going to go out to the nations, but it will be the new covenant. It will be the Torah of faith. But these people will have to also keep the Sabbath, keep the holy days in their appointed times, and you, the ministers of the new covenant, your end of it, you're going to be his body. You're going to be his. Now you're his body. You're going to be this bride. You're going to expound on him, the end fulfillments of the Torah, to these what? Coming common land people. So when someone asks you, what's the meaning of the Passover? You're not going to say, well, we were slaves in the land of Egypt. And with a mighty hand and outstretched arm, Yahweh redeemed us out of there. He set us free. No, you're going to tell them. That was a shadow of the Son of God going outside the camp on that very day. As those lambs were being bound to the altar. He was slaughtered outside the camp. And that sacrifice redeems you. It releases you from the bondage of sin, and the process of sanctification begins through him, which primary holy day is the Day of Atonement. When that man in white garments, that ghost, that spirit, comes and brings the Holy Spirit and begins the process of sanctification on the day you believe. But first, you have to have a king and you have to have co-rulers. Just to review, here's the common land people. They're not here yet. The cat's out of the bag. Here's what's right now. This is the church, the firstborn ones, the Huios sons of God. You have that now through faith. You're even put into the kingdom, the millennium, Colossians 1:13. You get it all by faith, and it's in the Torah. This is only what exists right now. But of the increase of his government there shall be no end. First comes what's coming. What's coming is the lost sheep, the house of Israel and Judah. There's another captivity coming. They will be brought back first. Then the nations will be reined in. Just in review, Why are there 3 high feasts out of these 7 feasts? Why are there 3 feasts of ascension, or 3 pilgrimage feasts of ascension up to Jerusalem? 3 times a year shall all your males appear before Yahweh, and they shall not appear before him empty-handed. You don't get this from the Hebrew Roots movement. Okay, notice during the days of unleavened bread, 7 days, beginning the day after the Passover on the 15th at sundown. I used to keep it. What do you have during the days of unleavened bread? On the Sabbath that would fall between the 2 annual Sabbaths, when the start of unleavened bread and the end, there was always a weekly Sabbath. And notice, on the morrow after the Sabbath was the resurrection of Messiah. Why on the morrow after the Sabbath? Why? He was raised a new creation, a spirit being, on the 8th day. He was accepted by God. He ascended, and God said, "You are my beloved son. You are my son. Today I have begotten you." Okay, you have a king. Yeah, you need co-rulers. Why 50 days? Well, that's the type of the Jubilee. Why 50 days later, on the morrow, after the Sabbath, you have 2 wave loaves? On the morrow, after the Sabbath, the church, when you were baptized, the day of Pentecost or Shavuot was fulfilled in your life when you believed, when you were baptized. Body of sin was done away with. That's why you have 50 here. The body of sin was done away. And you were raised with Messiah, your head. You were presented to God on that day. Just to review, Colossians 2:11-12, baptized with him, right, into his death. The body of flesh, circumcised by the circumcision of Messiah, that's the risen man, raised with him according to the operation or the work of God. This is the progressive fulfillments of the holy days. It's a timeline, okay? So God made all these ancient Israelites act out what he was going to do concerning humanity. Okay, so you have co-rulers with him. You have his body. You were presented to God on the 8th day, the morrow after. That was fulfilled when you believed. You don't have to wait once a year to keep Shavuot to be sanctified, to be set apart. You got it on the day you believed. You were presented to God as one of the 2 wave loaves, the Gentiles and Israel and Judah, the foolish nation. Okay. Then you have tabernacles, and then you have this 8th day after tabernacles, which is the millennium. Now you have what's called the coming common land people. The Torah, once again, is a very detailed instruction manual concerning the restitution of all things. Beginning on the Day of Atonement at the 120th Jubilee blast, that's the beginning of the restitution of all things. That's when the Huios sons of God appear, and that's when the creation is given over to the sons of God, the Huios sons of God, the firstborn ones of the better resurrection. I'm lost here. So anyways, this here is the grape harvest. They will be ruled with a rod of iron, with a shepherd's rod of iron. So they're going to have to keep the appointed times. That's when you'll be teaching them. They will keep the Sabbath. They will fulfill the role of the common land people. They are not born again. I'm going to show you in the ritual of the cleansing of the leper in chapter 14 versus the consecration of the priesthood. There's a difference. So, on the 8th day, after the 1,000 years of peace or the reign of Messiah, in which all these laws begin to kick in, they must rest from their labors, from their sinful ways, mankind. All sins must be forgiven, the law of the forgiveness of debts. All slaves must be set free. If you buy a Hebrew servant, he will serve you 6 years, but in the 7th year, he must be set free. But there is another, that is the Feast of Ingathering, there's another 8th day. At the end of this 1,000 years, that's when God comes down from heaven, Revelation 21:22, and the bride appears, New Jerusalem, that's when the grape harvest, when they will appear before Messiah. The grape harvest. You have the wheat, you have the barley, you have the wheat, and over here you have the grapes. It doesn't really show that, but I have it here. Once again, you have the barley, you have your king, you have your co-rulers, and then you have the grapes, who must be crushed down, put under the feet. Those are allusions by Paul, referencing you back to the Torah. That in the dispensation of the fullness of times, he might gather all in Christ. Gather, in gathering. That's an allusion back to the Feast of Ingathering. Okay. The Torah is a very, very detailed instruction manual concerning the restitution of all things. There's a difference between the priests and the common land people. And it shall be like people like priest. Okay, there's a difference. Once again, what's it now, the few? Verse 6, Revelation 20. Blessed and holy is he who has part in the first resurrection. Over such the second death has no power. You can't be hurt by it. It doesn't say destroyed. Because the second death is the death of the sinful leper. But they shall be what? Priests of God and of Christ, and shall reign with him 1,000 years. Okay, there's only a priesthood being called right now to the better resurrection. Nothing more, nothing less. Okay, the Torah is very specific, and Revelation is upholding the Torah. Allusions, hundreds of allusions in the book of Revelation. Okay, so now let's get into, let me see here, let me think. Let's just go to Leviticus 8. There's a difference. the cleansing of the leper in chapter 14 of Leviticus and Leviticus 8, the consecration of the priesthood, it's, there's a lot of similar stuff, but there's a wide discrepancy. Okay. Once again, when these people come back, okay, the Torah is going to go out to the nations. They will walk in. I will cause them to walk in my statutes and judgments. They are going to have a new spirit put in their inner man. Their lab in Hebrew, their cardia. That's the Spirit of God and the Spirit of Christ. And they will walk in love. I guess can't help but review these firstborn ones, these firstborn sons. They're going to be around his throne. They're going to begin to replace the seraphs, the angels. For he has not made the world to come in subjection to angels. Okay, these firstborn ones who will have the fullness of God in them, who will not be able to sin, who will be raised incorruptible, will be the guardians of his throne, the New Jerusalem that's coming. This will be the beloved city in the camp of the saints, the New Jerusalem. And they will be the teachers. They will be the rulers over the nations, and they will feed the lost sheep in the nations with knowledge. The true knowledge of the Son of God that's found, buried in the sacred secrets, the dark sayings, the hidden truths of the Torah, the shadows and types. The true knowledge of God will go out to the nations, a new and better covenant on better promises. One of the things, the main thing is, we're not going to be a priesthood of destruction. We're not going to be stoning people, killing people. We're going to be restoring the earth. We're not coming back to save the whales. Coming back to save our fellow man, our fellow mankind. Sip of coffee here. So what this is in Leviticus is actually being, I've shown this picture before. This is a great picture. Here's Moses. Now notice Moses he washed them. There's the bronze laver in the background. He washed them with it. They were baptized. They died. And they had to put on these white garments in order to serve in the shadow and copy of the heavenly things, which is coming down to earth. The real throne and all this stuff is coming down to earth. They were the guardians. They kept charge over the tabernacle and the work of God. And it was the ministry of what? They had the ministry of reconciliation. That's where Paul gets all this stuff at. So they had to become spirit beings, right? Shadow and copy of the heavenly things, reality of the shadow and copy of the heavenly things. Everything is precise. It's an instruction manual. And Yahweh spoke to Moses, saying, take Aaron and his sons with him, and the garments, the anointing oil, a bull as a sin offering. Well, there it is. There's difference number one that you're going to see. That the priests get a bull. Their office is much higher, number one. And what you will see in the cleansing, a similar process of the common land person. Let me just show this again. When you look at this kingdom from the Torah, when you're reading the Torah, it's actually showing the millennium. Okay, but this model here ultimately is where there's no sea, is Revelation, fulfilled in Revelation 21 and 22. Okay, nations that are saved, that's added in. The nations outside And the New Jerusalem, this square here, which is represents the New Jerusalem. Actually, it's not a square, it's a rectangle, 75 by 150, but it looks more like a square, and that's good because the 2/3 of it are going to be gone, and the holiest of all will represent that square. It was a square. Okay, so if you look at it, if you're reading the Torah and studying it, it's actually God is tabernacling with them. I will tabernacle among them. I will be their God, and they shall be my people. Leviticus 26. A kingdom of priests and a holy nation. Okay, so if you're looking at it, you have these priests in white garments. So it's a purely picture of the millennium. Okay, so here we have, go on here, gather the congregation together at the door of the tabernacle of meeting. So Moses did as Yahweh commanded him, and the congregation was gathered together at the door of the tabernacle of meeting. And Moses said to the congregation, this is what Yahweh commanded to be done. This is for the Torah, having a shadow of the good things to come. Then Moses brought Aaron and his sons and washed them with water. Moses is doing all the work. That's why Paul said this is the operation of God by faith. You'll see that Paul is alluding back to this ceremony. In Romans chapter 6, Ephesians chapter 2, the beginning of it, and Colossians chapter 2, verses 11 through 12. Also, Galatians 4. And he put the tunic on him, the beginning of Galatians 4. The end of chapter 3. Girded him with a sash, clothed him with the robe, and put an ephod on him, clothed him with the robe. That's this white garment that's underneath here. He's got all this other stuff, the ephod, the breastplate, all that stuff. But he's got this robe or tunic underneath this white garment. It looks like these. He looks like the Spirit of Christ. He looks like the Ancient of Days. I usually have that picture of Aaron in the holiest of all with the Spirit of God, but I didn't put it up. God is doing all the work. This is what? What is this? This is the new birth. It's being born again of spirit, not of flesh, not of blood, not by the will of man, but of God in actuality. You get that now by faith. You're a priest. You're a firstborn one. It's different. Clothed him with the robe and put the ephod on him, and he girded him with an intricately woven band of the ephod, and with it tied the ephod on him. Then he put the breastplate on him and put the Urim and the Thummim in the breastplate. It was like a couple of stone. That's just another video or something. I'm just going to go on. And he put the turban on his head. So this gives them a new spirit. These white hair, this white hats represent pure spirit, pure inner man, the pure mind as a result of regeneration and new birth, as they look like their Father, the Ancient of Days. This is God reproducing himself. Also on the turban on his front, he put a golden plate, the holy crown, as Yahweh had commanded Moses. Also Moses took the anointing oil and anointed the tabernacle and all that was in it and consecrated them. He sprinkled some of it on the altar 7 times. I'm just going to skip through the tabernacle stuff. Now notice, verse 12. And he poured some of the anointing oil on Aaron's head and anointed him to consecrate him. Then Moses brought Aaron's sons and put the tunics on them. Once again, Moses is doing, I've covered this before, Moses is doing all the work. They're waiting in line here. And they're together, right? Baptized with him. Planted together with him in baptism. Do you see where Paul gets his words? baptized into his death. You're with him. Paul, planted together with him in baptism. Romans chapter 6, the beginning. Everything is precise. His body you have to be connected with the head. So Aaron's sons put the tunics on them, girded them with sashes, and put the hats on them as Yahweh had commanded Moses. Moses is playing God here. Moses is playing the role of God here. Yahweh's making him do it. Just like he had him erect the tabernacle in chapter 40 of Exodus. And then you see that in verse 2 of Hebrews chapter 8. And he brought the bull for the sin offering. You get a higher office. You have a higher office, you have a bull. Then Aaron and his sons laid their hands on the head of the bull for the sin offering, and Moses killed it. Then he took the blood and put some of it on the horns of the altar all around with his finger and purified the altar. Okay, so here we go with the cleansing of the altar again. So it took the entrails, the kidneys, the fatty lobe attached to the liver, and the 2 kidneys with their fat, and Moses burned them on the altar. And that smoke ascends up to God. It's like those innards, the inner man. They were accepted. Into your hands I command my spirit. All right, but the bull on its side, its flesh, it's awfully burned with fire outside the camp. Now you got to remember these are types. Messiah is the anti-type. If you're accounted worthy of the first resurrection, you are an anti-type. You are an anti-type. Burned with fire outside the camp. So all the priests' sins were destroyed long ago. You just got to go through the process of admitting them and being cleansed with them. Being cleansed of them. Then he brought the ram as the burnt offering. And Aaron and his sons laid their hands on the head of the ram. And Moses killed it. Then he sprinkled the blood all around the altar. And he cut the ram into pieces. And Moses burned the head, the pieces, and the fat. Then he washed the entrails and the legs in water. And Moses burned the whole ram on the altar. It's a burnt sacrifice for a sweet aroma. Okay, going on here. And he brought the second ram, the ram of consecration. Now, you were consecrated a priest. When? On Pentecost. He's only calling a priesthood now. This is another difference between priest and people. Okay? It's a very precise book, the Torah. Instruction manual. Then Aaron and his sons laid their hands on the head of the ram, and Moses killed it. Also he took some of its blood and put it on the tip of Aaron's right ear, on the thumb of the right hand, and on the big toe. You see this in Leviticus 14. And his right foot. Then he brought Aaron's sons, and Moses put some of the blood on the tips of their right ears, on the thumbs of their right hands, and on the big toes of their right feet. And Moses sprinkled the blood all around on the altar. Then he took the fat tail, and the fat that was on the entrails, the fatty lobe attached to the liver, the 2 kidneys. I'm just rushing through this part. And from the basket of unleavened bread that was before Yahweh, he took 1 unleavened cake, a cake of bread anointed with oil, and 1 wafer, and put them on the fat and on the right thigh. This is the consecration offering. And he put all these in Aaron's hands and in his son's hands, these this bread and unleavened cake of bread. They ate it. It was like fellowship with God. Right? And wave them as a wave offering before Yahweh. So you get, on the day of Pentecost, you're a wave offering before God. You were given to God on the day of Pentecost. That's why they had to go up to Jerusalem during Shavuot. They had to go up to Jerusalem. That's why you go up to the heavenlies. You're a finished product according to the operation of God through faith. Then Moses took them from their hands and burned them on the altar, on the burnt offering. They were consecration offerings for a sweet aroma. Common land people don't get that. You got to overcome Satan in this world. You got to keep yourself spot. It's a higher calling. It's a harder. That's why Messiah said, broad is the way. I mean, narrow is the gate, and broad is the way that leads to ruin. Better translation. That was an offering made by fire to Yahweh, and Moses took the breast and waved it as a wave offering before Yahweh. That was Moses' part. Okay. Again, they were eating Christ. Okay. That's what we have an altar that those who serve the tabernacle have no right to eat. I am the bread of life. And the bread that I will give is my flesh, which I give for the life of the world. Yeah, if he who eats my flesh and drinks my blood has life. Okay? This is all fulfillments of all these things. Then Moses took some of the anointing oil and some of the blood which was on the altar and sprinkled it on Aaron, on his garments, on his sons, and on the garments of his sons with him, and consecrated Aaron, his garments, his sons, and the garments of his sons with him. So it's the blood of Messiah and the Holy Spirit. You know, you're going to be a spirit. You're going to be a spirit. It's all through him. My question is here, why didn't he take some of the oil in his hands and smear it on the foreheads of Aaron's sons? He did it with Aaron, but he didn't do it with his sons. Because Christ is our head as our husband, right? We are to be fastened to the head. He's our head. We're one. Because he's our head. We got his mind. He's our head. He's our husband. We're his helpmate. We're one. We're one body. We're his body. That's why they didn't get the oil on their head. All right. So what you just had here on the day of Shavuot, and it will be fulfilled when? Day of Atonement, 120th Jubilee, 50th year, which is also an 8th Sabbath of years. You're always as a finished product, you are always associated with the 8th day. You are associated with being a new creation. That's why they had to keep charge. Let me read this. This is what Moses said, according to Yahweh, and you shall not go outside the door of the tabernacle of meeting for 7 days, until the days of your consecration are ended. For 7 days he shall consecrate you. There are 3 levels to the tabernacle. I don't want to get, I'm going to save that for another video, but there's the court of humanity, then there's the holy place, which is considered the second heaven. Then you have the third heaven, which is the holiest of all, the Holy of Holies. You are now in the Holy of Holies. But they were in that realm. We're on the earth. Yeah, we're on the earth, but we're also in the heavenly realm. That's why he told them, don't go outside that for 7 days. Keep the charge of Yahweh, so that you may not die, for I have so been commanded. So Aaron and his sons did all these things as the Lord had commanded by the hand of Moses. So what happens? And it came to pass on the 8th day that Moses called Aaron and his sons and the elders of Israel, called them out. That's the day that Yahweh appeared and burned up the offering, started the fire of the bronze altar. It's the beginning of the millennium. You will appear, you must appear on the 8th day. And you will appear what? Incorruptible. You will not be subject to the law of Moses. You will not be subject to keep the statutes and judgments. You will be incorruptible. You are an administrator of the new covenant. You will administer the spiritual end fulfillments of them. Concerning the restitution of all things, you will teach them the Torah of faith, as Paul was teaching the Gentiles in Romans and Galatians. That you don't. That the Passover on the appointed day did nothing for you. But when you believe, that's when it kicks in. Did nothing for you concerning eternal life, being saved. It saved the Israelites out of the physical land of Egypt. You will teach them what it really was for, the end fulfillments. Same with unleavened bread. The remission of sins. The blotting out of sins. The blotting out of the leaven. You will be ministers of the new covenant. You will be his wife. You will rule over the nations, and you will feed these lost sheep in the nations with true knowledge. The spiritual end fulfillments. All right. Now we have this. We're going to go down the road here, chapter 14, and okay, when somebody gets diagnosed by you, the priest, remember, Moses did all the work. Moses clothed the priests, cleansed them. There was a death, and it was a baptism, and they were raised incorruptible. They had to serve in the shadow and copy of the heavenly things. So shall it be when they appear on the earth. The kingdom of God will come down from heaven. The stone made without hands will strike the nations. And these nations will be consumed. They will be like chaff. They'll blow away. And this stone will become a great mountain and fill the whole earth, but it's going to take time. Beginning with the remnant of the house of Israel and the house of Judah. So let's examine the cleansing process of a common land person. So remember, if you look at this shadow kingdom, which was never the real thing, in the Torah, you're looking at the millennium. And Yahweh spoke to Moses, saying, "This shall be the law of the leper, law of the one with Sarat, one with intentional sin, for the day of his cleansing. He shall be what? Brought to the priest." So you are going to be in charge of their cleansing. And the priest shall go out of the camp, and the priest shall examine him. And indeed, if the leprosy is healed, so this is like a new birth too. It's like a cleansing. And you'll see that will teach the common land person that he needs to be in the 8th day, as I'll show you. So the towards the shadow of God, this is a tutor. It's going to teach them how they need to be. If the leprosy is healed, the sin, if he's repented, he's cleansed, by the water and the fire his garment in the leper, then the priest shall command to take for him who is to be cleansed 2 living and clean birds, cedar wood, like a red wood, scarlet, that's the tola worm, that's their worm that dieth not. That translates tola, the tola worm. It's buried in there with that translation. And hyssop, a branch, like it's like a mint bush. It grew long stems, and they would it's really a picture of Christ sprinkling. They would sprinkle blood, and it was used for the red heifer cleansing, which is the lake of fire. It's another way of presenting the lake of fire. And the priest shall command that one of the birds be killed in an earthen vessel over running water. As for the living bird, he shall take it, the cedar wood and the scarlet, the tola worm, and the hyssop, and dip them in the living bird and the blood of the bird that was killed over the running water, or translated, living water. So this is a cleansing. This is another type of birth, but you're going to see differences. And he shall sprinkle it 7 times on him who is to be cleansed from the leprosy. So you get water and fire, you get the blood, and shall pronounce him clean, and he shall let the living bird loose in the open field. So as the sin offering, it takes his sins away. And he who is to be cleansed shall wash. Now here's where the big difference is. You notice it. He who is to be cleansed shall wash his clothes, shave off all his hair, and wash himself in water, that he may be clean. Now, do you get it? What happened with the consecration of the priests? Moses did all the work. This person is still in his flesh. This person has to do some of the work. He has to wash his own clothes. Okay, there's the difference. There's the big difference. He has to wash his own clothes. He's still a common land person. He's still considered flesh. He will still have the ability to sin, where you are incorruptible, and you have that now according to faith. When you do sin, you just admit it and you keep going. Your status doesn't change. Unless you sin habitually, you turn and you start sinning intentionally, that you just deliberately abandon, like Demas did. Love this present evil age. So you get that? They wash their own clothes. They're doing a lot of the work themselves. And in the kingdom, they will have to keep the statutes and judgments. They will have to keep in the appointed times, because you're going to teach them what these things all pointed to. They are the children. They are children that differ not from a slave, actually. He who is to be cleansed shall wash his clothes, shave all his hair, and wash himself in water, that he may be clean. After that he shall come into the camp. So he's making his way into the camp. He's coming towards what? Yahweh. In the center of the camp. Come into the camp and shall stay outside his tent 7 days. But on the 7th day he shall shave off all his hair, shave off the hair of his head and his beard and his eyebrows. All his hair he shall shave off. He shall wash his hair. Here he goes again. He shall wash his clothes and wash his body in water, and he shall be clean. He shall what? Wash his clothes. He hasn't attained yet full sonship. The tutor is teaching him what his destiny will be and what he has, what has to happen in the process. And it's like even I looking in a glass dimly here. And on the 8th day he shall take 2 male lambs without blemish, 1 ewe lamb of the first year without blemish, 3/10 of an ephah of fine flour mixed with oil as a grain offering, and 1 log of oil. Then the priest who makes him clean, or it's going to go through him, it's actually representing your Messiah. You're his right-hand man. He's the head. He's letting you do the work. This is the joy of your calling. Restoring these people back to Yahweh. All this is just we see it in a mirror dimly, then face to face. And the priest who makes him clean shall present the man who is to be made clean and those things before Yahweh at the door of the tabernacle of meeting. When? On the 8th day. So this is pointing him, this common land person, this grape, to the Feast of Ingathering. Well, this is during the Feast of Ingathering, Tabernacles, the millennium. But at the end, on the 8th day, after Tabernacles, on the 8th day, he will be changed in full. That's when he will don these white garments. And he will become a Huios, son of God. But during the millennium, this is his status. He has to wash his own clothes. He remains a common land person. He does not attain the status of a priest, which is really, in reality, a firstborn Huios, son of God. That's what those garments are. And then the priest who makes him clean shall present the man who is to be made clean. And the priest shall take 1 male lamb and offer it as a trespass offering and the log of oil or a sin offering. Okay, a lamb, not a bull. Once again, different status. And the log of oil, and wave them as a wave offering before Yahweh. And he shall, okay, so this is a wave offering here. This is a rehearsal for him when he will be presented on his appointed 8th day, 3 times a year, shall all your males appear before Yahweh. They get that. After Tabernacles, they will be raised from the dead or changed and will put on the Huios garments, sons of God. Okay. Shall kill the lamb in the place where he kills the sin offering and the burnt offering in a holy place. For as the sin offering is the priest, so the trespass offering it is most holy. Okay, so he goes through this ritual. The priest shall take some of the blood of the trespass offering. Notice it's in the hands of the priest, not Moses. That's you doing some kind of cleansing process, or, it's through Messiah. But again, will these people have to go through this? I will cause them, they will keep my statutes and my judgments. You're going to teach them what these things point to. Eventual sonship on the 8th day. Put it on the tip of the right ear of him who is to be cleansed, on the thumb of the right hand, and on the big toe of the of his right foot. Okay, same rituals here as you got in the priesthood consecration. And the priest shall take some of the log of oil and pour it into the palm of his own left hand, and the priest putting it on the ear, the thumb, and the foot, giving you a hearing ear, and cleansing your works through the hand, and your feet the path that you walk on. You will walk in the ways of God and his Son. And the priest shall dip his right finger in the oil that is in his left hand, and shall sprinkle some of the oil with his finger 7 times before Yahweh. Okay, let me keep going. And the rest of the oil in his hand, the priest shall put some of it on the tip of the right ear. Of him is to be cleansed, on the thumb, and on the right hand, and on the big toe of the right foot, on the blood of the trespass offering. The rest of the oil that is in the priest's hand, he shall put on the head of him who is to be cleansed. So we're Messiah's head. We're connected to him directly. These people seem like they're individually given the Spirit. It's in a different way because they're not his bride. So the priest shall make atonement for him before Yahweh. Okay? All right. You see the difference. They have to do some of the work on their own. And the big one is they stay in their fleshly garments. They maintain the status of what? People of the earth, the common land people. They will have to keep the laws. They will have to walk in his statutes and judgments. You will be the administrators. There's a difference between people and priest. And once again, because you are a priest, you should be learning the things, the shadows and types in the Torah. You are in no way obliged, or you are no way now free to keep Christmas, Easter, call Sunday the Sabbath, and all that. Once again, that is a false paradigm that did not exist in the first century. That's not what Paul was trying to get across. Paul was expounding on the end fulfillments of the Torah. Paul was alluding to the priesthood. Peter, in Revelation, referenced it. Paul, a master of allusions, alluded to it. So there's a difference between people and priest. They are of the earth, and they are of the kingdom of God. They are in the heavenlies. They're coming down to earth. There's a different, once again, there's a wide difference between these two until they ascend to God, or they come before Yahweh on their appointed 8th day at the time of the consummation of the ages, or the 8th day. Deuteronomy. I want to go there. You know what, let me just go to, maybe I'll finish it here with Galatians. Now I say that the heir, as long as he is a child, does not differ at all from a slave. That's going to be their status in the kingdom. Does not differ at all from a slave, though he is master of all. Well, he's in his appointed time, he's going to be adopted in. To what? To be a Helios, son of God, but is under guardians and stewards until the time appointed by the Father. You know who's going to be the guardians and stewards of these people? You are. You're going to be the ministers of the new covenant. You're going to rule over them with a shepherd's rod of iron. But as under guardians and stewards until the time appointed by the Father. When was your time appointed by the Father, that you became a huios, son of God, on the day you were baptized, where you fulfilled Pentecost. You were a wave offering on that day. I didn't even go into the Pentecost. You got 10 what? Burnt offerings. You got a couple of peace offerings. You were waved as a wave offering. Those 2 loaves were waved before Yahweh. You were given to God on that day. What's the time appointed by the Father for you? Even so we, he's talking about the Jews here, when we were children, or that differed not from a slave, were in bondage under the elements of the world. Well, you know what? They're going to be under the new covenant, but you know what? They're going to learn, they have to go through the ABCs. Because it's not their appointed time until when? When do they appear before Yahweh? When will they appear as huios, sons of God, before Yahweh? On their appointed 8th day. 3 times a year shall all your males appear before Yahweh. Okay. But when the fullness of the time had come, God sent forth his Son, born of a woman, born under the Torah. Remember, Paul's talking about the letter of the Torah as written by Moses. He studied it. He laid it up in his inner being. It's an instruction manual. Now notice, to redeem those who were under the Torah, that we might receive the adoption as sons. So this adoption is not talking about like a kid in an orphanage. It's talking about the firstborn son, the time when the father's ready to bequeath his, say he ran a vineyard, or he was a farmer. Well, farmer, he ran a vineyard. The son was trained under guardians and stewards to receive that inheritance. That he was adopted into that inheritance. That's how it went. And according to the law of the firstborn, you get twice as much as the secondborn. Deuteronomy 21, like verses like 17 through 20, something like that. Born under the law Torah, to redeem those who were under the Torah, that we might receive the adoption as sons. When do they receive the adoption as sons? Not some foreign kid in an orphanage. When do they appear as, this word sons is huios? On their appointed 8th day. Until then, you will be the guardians and stewards of them under the new covenant. Until the time appointed by the Father. And when is that for them? On their appointed 8th day. Your appointed 8th day, once again, was the morrow after the Sabbath. Shavuot, which you got when you believed. Not by the work of that law once a year. It all makes sense. Okay, so you will govern them. You will be the teachers of that, right? Teachers of them. You will be their teachers. You will be their guardians and stewards. The spirit of the law, the Torah of faith. You picture yourself, I know the Messiah is here, picture yourself in the white garment, teaching the common land people. They're coming to you. What's a burnt offering? Well, it's Messiah giving his life, laying down his life completely to God. Let us walk in love. I could go there. Ephesians chapter 4 or chapter. See, I'm starting to get like now. I'm like missing. Now I'm like getting off. Okay, maybe I should go there. But anyways, ultimately, Messiah was the burnt offering was he offered himself up in love. So things like that, you're going to teach them the spiritual end fulfillments. My second video today. And walk in love as Christ also loved us and gave himself for us as a sacrifice, a sweet-smelling aroma to God. Paul was alluding to the burnt offering. Okay, they're going to come to you. You're going to be the guardians and stewards of these people until their appointed time. Until their adoption as sons. And because you are sons, God has sent forth the Spirit of his Son into your hearts. Into what? The cardia. I'm going to write my law in their mind and on their hearts. Put them in their thoughts. He's going to put the Spirit, inherent righteousness, crying out, Abba, Father, Papa. Therefore you are no longer a slave, but a son. And if a son, then an heir of God through Messiah. Heir of God. Or what? Godhood. Okay? They will not get that status in the millennium. Their time to fulfill the law of the common land people, if you want to call it that. You got the Torah of the priesthood, and you've got the Torah of the common land people, which the Hebrew rooters are casting themselves into right now. They've not studied the priesthood to apply it to themselves. Levites, shadow and copy, shadow of the good things to come. The firstborn ones. I've taken the Levites instead of all the firstborn of Israel. The Levites are mine. I am their inheritance. That's what Paul meant by getting the adoption. I am their inheritance. Right? I am their inheritance. Then an heir of God through Messiah. Where does he get his words? Okay. So there's a difference. So the next video on this, whenever I do it, will be on the book of the covenant. These coming people of the land will have to fulfill. They'll have to fulfill that. But under the new covenant. Okay. So thank you for your time and thank you for listening.